and then we will go into the business unit Safe Storage. So I welcome Stefan up on stage.
Thank you very much, Henrik. So, good morning, everybody. This is my first time in front of you. So I was thinking of taking the opportunity with a very short and brief introduction of myself. I am Swedish, but I have worked most of my time abroad, roughly 15 years in companies, 10 years in Procter & Gamble. I've had the opportunity to work in Stora Enso/Papyrus in both an industrial setting as well as private equity ownership for 10 years with Altor and Triton. And then also in an American company, Walgreens Boots Alliance in pharmacy. So quite broad background, but also coming from an industrial side. My strengths are very much change management. That's where I've been working with change management and leadership the last 10 years, coming from industries which have had quite rapid decline. Versus Gunnebo now, where we have a very interesting growth opportunity, which so far we haven't captured, as Henrik showed, but I'm sure that we will do that going forward as well. Why did I choose to come to Gunnebo? I think it's a huge potential in this company, in this business. We have a lot of people which has energy and competence, and I think it's our responsibility as leaders to let this competence and energy free. And I think that's up to us, of course, now to show that we can do that going forward in this new setting, as Henrik described. So I'm really happy to be here, and as I said, I also think that with the skills I have on change management and how you should run these journeys, I hope that I can also contribute to what we are trying to achieve now with Gunnebo. Looking at my business unit, Safe Storage, what are we about? We are very much about protecting valuables, and we do that to provide peace of mind, both at work, at home, but also at leisure. And I think that we are all aware of what is happening in the world today. I think, unfortunately, there is more and more uncertainty going on, both if you look on public sites, what has happened the last couple of years, not the least here in Stockholm, but also I think we are faced with more and more crime, both physical crime as well as cyber crime. And I think that is also, of course, why this business is interesting and why we see a lot of growth. The vision for us is to become the number one protector of valuables through industry-leading innovation. And I think that the important word for me here is very much innovation. I will come back to some interesting products that we are launching during the speech today or during the presentation today. But this is both, of course, from a digital arena, but also quite interesting things when it comes to cybersecurity. Also telling you some stories there that is quite striking, actually, what is happening around us. If you look at the market in itself, the need for protecting and storing valuables is increasing, as Henrik said, around 6%. And this is quite a striking number, of course. 6% annual growth is quite a high number. We have a market share, if you take with France, Luxembourg, and also the discontinued operation of around 7%. That will be a bit short of that going forward. But we are one of the few global players here that has a global production network and a global sales network. And I think this is something we could utilize going forward in a better way. So this is an opportunity. And what I mean there is that we can learn from markets, because all markets are going in a different pace. And I will come back to some examples on that as well. We know that the bank sector is in decline. I think we have seen that, not the least in 2017 in our business, which declined. I think that we are spending a lot of time now and energy on new business segments and new opportunities, and I will show that on the next slide, what I mean there. So that is, of course, one of the priority areas, customer focus and segment development, besides what I talked about around innovation. And I think we also see that if bank is declining, there are opportunities there still, because the banks are changing very much, as you're well aware. There are some from the banks here, maybe not the retail side, but what I have seen a lot in Germany, for example, is that you build completely new setups, where you have maybe more like an Apple flagship store, where you can come in, it's very open, it's very light, you can do all kinds of services there, more towards the automation of, you know, cash handling and so forth. And that is, of course, creating opportunity for us in this physical change, going from many small branch offices to a new setup. If you look then at which sectors am I talking about, public sector is one example. Hospitals, medicines, high-risk sites, data servers, and also documentation. This is something that is also more and more interesting for you know, the competition, so to say, to steal. There are today criminal networks that are like companies. Many of them are deriving from the eastern side of us, and of course on the cybersecurity side, this is a huge threat to us. Schools, computers and phones. I think you have children with both computers and phones, and those needs to be protected. In homes, valuables, I think also internet delivery solutions. There are different things being tested here. Assa Abloy is testing, you know, a locking solution. I personally wouldn't let maybe people into my house or my home. So there I think there is an opportunity for very smart locker systems, also from a temperature perspective, where you can also store temperature sensitive products going forward. In distribution, pharmaceuticals, only in Germany last year, over 600 new medical drugs was launched with a price of over 5,000 euros. Small package, 5,000 euros. So they are going around in small delivery vans with products that is more valuable than what Loomis is driving around with very limited protection. And of course, this needs to be protected going forward. And this is a rapid change. So I see this is a fantastic opportunity, the whole distribution and the pharmaceutical sector. Retail, I think you know, and I will have some business cases there later on from the jewelry side. I think handbags, jewelry, watches is something that is increasing. And that is not small money, and you don't want that to be taken from you. So I think also there is a need for smarter solutions and opportunities. For example, selling this together with kitchen supplies or wardrobe supplies. So maybe IKEA will launch one day. And if you look on the slide or the graph to the left, you can also see from a geographical perspective that there is not so that Europe is zero and the rest are growing tremendously, like we see in some other businesses. For example, that APAC has a steeper growth. I think this is a global issue to protect valuables, and we also see a fairly global market growth, even though, of course, the starting point is different, the market saturation is different. How does it then look for us on a global perspective? The market is worth, as we said earlier, around 32 billion SEK, growing with around 6%. So that is roughly 1.5–2 billion euros a year, which is quite massive. There is a quite fragmented landscape. So we have a lot of local, smaller or local regional players that is our competitors. Very few global players. And of course, this is an opportunity for us that we can capture, as also Henrik was talking about. If we then look at the different sectors, I'm not going to dwell too much about this slide, but I'm just wanting to say that it is also not so that we see one specific sector growth. There are some regional differences. For example, of course, the gun safes, we see a growth in the US because, of course, they have this as a big debate, but also they have a very high presence of guns there. But in general, I think there is growth in all different segments. One area which we see, which I think also has been discussed, and I will come back to that specifically, is ATM safes. ATM safes for us is a very important sector. And here we work as an OEM. And looking at the ATM market, you can maybe question, say, cash, how much does it grow in the future? What is happening there? Well, we see quite some interesting things. First of all, we see an overall growth of roughly 80,000 units per year. And that is driven, of course, by this new pattern we talked about before, that you need cash in different situations, and you also need it in different locations. So we have seen smaller units being dispersed in, for example, stores like in Sweden, like ICA and so forth, where you can take out cash as well when you are shopping. The main drivers for us, though, is replacement and upgrades. And what is happening there is that they are upgrading to higher security classes, because they've had some, our customers have some problems, of course, with theft or attacks. So higher security class, and roughly for us, the majority, I would say 70 to 80% is upgrades or replacements here. Last year, I think those that had a sharp eye saw this already in Henrik's presentation. We delivered roughly 65,000 ATM safes and 32,000 safes and vaults. And of course, the product range is, versus if you do a vault versus a safe, there is of course a huge delta in the revenue you generate here. On top of this also comes the service that we are generating for many of our products. Talking about the channels, how do we go to market? I think that here we have already done some clarification in the new business unit, and I will revert to that a little bit more going forward. We are selling complex systems and projects like big vaults or complex protection projects for example, a high-risk site. We are selling direct, and we are trying to handle that with, for example, a very competent team of installation technicians. Indirect sales we do through channel partners, and that is mainly the safe business. And here I think we want to be clear in the future that safe business we work with partners. When it comes to the service business, there we are also saying that we offer this either direct or via partners. So we are putting a pressure on ourselves to make sure that we are efficient and that we can have the right scale and competence. If we can't have that, I have been very clear to say that I'm willing also to look at partners to work with us here, possibly in combination with being a channel partner. So that is the discussion we are in right now. OEM sales, which is mainly the ATM business, that is a direct business. That is, being extremely lean and large volumes going into production units. Customers then, I think customer focus is one of 4 areas that I will talk about today. And I think customer focus for us when it comes to innovation or when it comes to how we set up our organization will be one of the deciding factors. We talked earlier before the meeting today about the sales quality. I think that is of course one thing that I am extremely keen on working with. How do we improve that? And the attention and the drive from my side is really to make sure that we serve then the needs of the customers. An example is India, where the gold loan business is very much growing. It's a huge industry, 25 billion, high presence in semi-urban and rural areas. And they have had a rising demand for security and how they should handle the gold they get in, like a pawn shop. We are today a preferred supplier of safe storage products for many of these companies. But what we have tried to do here is to really understand what are the issues for these companies. And typically there are a couple of things that we need to understand. First of all, they have robberies, and they want, of course, to reduce this and preferably have no theft or no robberies of this gold. We know that it takes 15 minutes to come in and do these robberies, and typically the average is €500,000. So it's a lot of money, a lot of value at stake. All actors then, of course, invest heavily in security. So they have guards, armed guards, they have a lot of guards there. I think also what we have seen is that they have a fairly simple model for how they store. So we have been working with them to try to develop solutions. And this is not, in a way, rocket science, but it's about understanding the customer needs, trying to use our competence and say, how do we develop a solution for you? And what we have then done is develop storage solutions where you can, for example, only open one drawer at a time. It's impossible for them to open more, which means that if a robbery exists or will take place, they can open one drawer and that's it. And then they have to leave. So, even though we can't prohibit or stop the robbery, we have at least helped them to minimize the theft, hopefully making this also more interesting. And of course, by this, we are trying to help them to reduce the cost and the risk for these things. Another very good example coming from the customer side is also what I talked about earlier, the change in what is happening now for banks. This is an example from Denmark, where we have sold a robot for what we call SSA, Safe Store Auto, where it's an automated system of safe deposit lockers. So basically we have a vault somewhere in a building, and then we have a room where you can come in as a private person, and via an authentication system you get your box of valuables, and you can then put in or take out, and then it's being transported back, which is of course solutions that we see now popping up in these stores that I talked about, or new bank settings of these flagship bank stores. If we then look at, that was the first section, a little bit talking about the market. The second section I will talk a little bit about financials. And then the third section, where I want to spend a little bit more time, is what do we do now going forward? How can we make sure that we win on the market? Safe storage then, 1.7 billion. These numbers now are excluding the discontinued operations. 35% roughly of group sales in 2017. We had an EBITDA of 7.4%. Negative sales growth, and this was very much relating to the bank decline that we see, which we haven't been able really to capture new areas for. And the market, as I said, is growing by 6%. Manufacturing, this is, I think, one of our strengths. We have a global manufacturing footprint. And that is quite interesting, because here, of course, we have factories which we can scale up. We have also factories which we can use for different geographies depending on the need. So I think this is a really, really good asset that is possible for us to do something really, really good with going forward. We also have, of course, all the necessary certifications, and I think that we are doing a very good job here in the manufacturing side. So this is something I really look forward to utilizing as a resource going forward. If you look then at the sales development during 16 to 18, we had a significant negative impact of declining sales to the bank segment in 16. I think we see a positive trend now in 18, and I will also come back to Q3, where we have a very strong performance. EBITDA so far this year is 8.1%, so we see an improvement here. Of course, I'm not happy with this, first of all, because we have a target which is higher. Secondly, because I have also personally very, very high beliefs that we can do something really, really good with this business. If you look then at Q3 and the result we had there, I think 36% of group sales now, so a little bit higher. We had 15% sales growth in third quarter, and we have a lot of interesting projects ongoing. We had a very good sales development for ATM safes. There is some turbulence on that market also from an OEM perspective with Diebold Nixdorf, and I think we have capitalized on that. We see strong sales growth in Americas, also to the channel partner network there that we have. We have a robust and very good channel partner network. And most markets in Asia Pacific are growing healthy. In Europe then, I think UK is a big market for us, and there we see a slowdown, very much due to Brexit. And that is not only in the safe storage business unit. We see that more or less in all segments. And hopefully now when the clarity around the Brexit is set, that will still pick up again, and the business, the belief, so to say, will come back there. If you look then at net sales, 479 and EBITDA of 44, coming to an EBITDA margin of 9.2%. So we see some improvement here, and I really hope that I can continue this trend with the team here going forward. If you then look at the market drivers and trends, and this I think is a very, very interesting part. I told you about the increased demand for safe and vaults, protecting valuables. We know that that is there. We see a rising demand from non-banking sectors, and a lot of the safe storage moves away from banks, and there are new opportunities arising. In Asia, for example, we see that these large housing complexes, we are installing these safe storage robots there. They are offering this for their tenants as a service. And I think this is something that will most likely come to Europe as well, at least in the city areas where you have a higher average income and maybe more need also to protect. And we also see the new patterns. I talked about that before. Handbags, watches, two examples. High value drugs, which was not there before in the same way, is exploding on the market. We also see increased sales of safe storage products due to this e-commerce, because we are also buying more and more complex and expensive products. We dare to do that today because we have some maturity there as well. So that needs to be stored, and also during transportation needs to be protected. If you look at then the key trends, we talked about cybersecurity, that grows in importance. Increased use of technology, of course, within safe and vaults. And I will come back to an innovation relating to that on my next slides, which we call Kelnet, which is a very, very interesting product. And of course, we see this smart connectivity. For example, today, many of you have alarm systems at home. And you have your phone, you have an app, you can see what is happening. If somebody if the alarm goes off, you get a call, why don't we integrate safe in those solutions, for example, that you can steer that, for example, if your son or daughter needs to take something, you can, open the safe for them, remote. These things will come as well. Also higher security concerns, unfortunately, I say, due to terrorism for all public and high-risk sites. This is something that is growing enormously. If we then see how we are addressing some of these areas, of course, first of all, we are doing this new business unit structure, which means that I am responsible now for this business with my team. There are no excuses. We have very clear responsibilities, who is going to do what, and we are focusing on this business every day. It is not so that any competitor is not on our radar, because we need to know what our customers need, and we need to beat everybody else that is trying to deliver on that need. That's my responsibility with the team. That gives us, of course, an opportunity to speed and transparency. We can see where we make money and where we don't, and we can put actions in place to handle that, and we will do that. Secondly, innovation. We are now focusing on our customers, moving away innovation from factories into the customer demand side. And that is a very, very important change that I'm doing, to focus on, what can we do for our customers? I had some examples before. More of that will come, and I think that is a really, really exciting area which I'm really burning for. Capture the bank change process. We have learned a lot here, for example, from Denmark, where we have helped the banking sector in change with storage solutions. We have been helping them in planning their new outlets, and I think we have an experience here that we can use in other countries. Scandinavia is typically very in the front when it comes to these changes, both on internet drive as well as the whole digitization. And I think we can use that knowledge now in many other markets, because we have seen what is happening here and we have some concepts, i.e. developing then segment solutions. And I think that's one of the advantages by being a global company that we can really capture. Reach new customer segments. I think that we are clarifying, I know we are clarifying the go-to-market strategy and how we are going to approach the segments. And there will be no question marks on that in the internal organization or towards our customers. Participate in solving cybersecurity issues. An example here, I was visiting a cybersecurity company in Germany a couple of months ago, and they are helping banks to protect from these threats, both ATMs, but also for the banks in itself. And then when I was going out, I was walking by their server hall, and then they had the service here and they had a window towards the street here. And I just asked them, okay, how do you protect your servers? And they looked at me. We have these products. We have developed this, and we have some very prominent customers here already. EMP cabinets, signal protection, either stealing signals, which is very easy today, or destroying servers. They could get their servers burnt in 10, 15 seconds. So they are hopefully a customer to us now. Offering competence in security and high-risk site protection. I think the heritage we have in Gunnebo is, as Henrik said, it's very diverse. But what we have acquired is a lot of knowledge around security. And I think that is an area where we can leverage going forward to help in many of these areas. Talking about innovation, one is what we call Kelnet. and I'm not Steve Jobs. I should have done maybe a bigger thing out of this, because I think this is a really, really interesting invention or innovation. This is a product that it will enable, for example, banks or retail to steer access to, for example, safes or doors remote in the future with one-time codes. Today, you need to have a very complex process of giving access. It could be keys, it could be security cards, and very often you have a very tedious process. With this, you can have a completely different process, steering everything. Like in Sweden, we have the bank ID, where you get these one-time codes. This is basically the same idea here, but for the locking. So this is something that we are going to launch, and I hope a lot of interesting things will come out of this. Not the least, of course, in the bank market, but also in other areas. The journey then, and I have already captured some of these points, but I still want to go through this, because I think this is where I'm trying to explain to you what I am working with and how I see that we can succeed in the future. First of all, we have had a very local driven sales agenda. As Henrik said, we have had sales companies, and then we have had a matrix with products coming in from the side. And these local companies have sold then all different product areas products. Today we are changing that, and we are going to have a very dedicated organization for safe storage, where I have dedicated resources locally, where I can measure salespeople and see how good are they, and are we delivering on what we promise. And as I said, we can also have very clear and fast processes, and also utilize, of course, the global scale in safe storage. And I gave some examples before. very high bank dependency, and what we are doing now is that we are spending much more time in a broader spectrum of segments. And I gave you 5, 6 examples before of where we are working now and spending a lot of time. Global supply chain with long lead times and high working capital. We are focusing a lot. I have put in a new team there in the supply chain area, and we have already done quite a lot of very exciting stuff there to build this supply chain now fit for the customer segments that I talked about before. Project business direct, and then the sales via our distributor partners. Cost and complexity, we have a lot of cost focus. There are a lot of activities going on to increase our cost competitiveness, and also the transparency where cost arrives. I think we need to have an honest picture here to be very sure that we are taking the right decisions. And of course, now when we have split this business up in business units, that has given us that opportunity. And I think that is great. Uneven profitability level, I am very clear that, and I think Henrik said it as well, all units need to deliver on our targets. The units that are not delivering have action plans to improve. The units that are delivering have action plans to improve even more. And that is something that I'm working a lot with, that attitude that we can always do more. Innovation focus, I've talked a lot about, deriving from customer insights and having a very, very clear go-to-market strategy. Looking at, you saw this slide earlier when Henrik was presenting, and I think that we have now a dedicated team, customer focus, clear roles and responsibilities, and a very clear vision and mission. And it's very much for me about creating a clear, where are we going? It's about having tools for the people to perform. It's about energy, that we give the people energy to do even a little bit better than what we expect them to do. So those are the 3 things that I'm pushing, or we are pushing very much. We have activities within sales, we have activities within operations, brand assortment strategy, and supply chain. I have new people in place now since a couple of months ago here, and here. And I have now a very, very good team to my disposal that can help now to deliver on what we have promised. And what I would like to do as a wrap-up, I told you in the beginning why I came to Gunnebo, and that is because I really believe in that we can do a difference here. I think it's a very important area of safety and security that we are working with, first of all. I think we have an opportunity to make a difference with our competencies and really show that that can also come through in the result. And I am focusing on, I have 4 areas that I'm working with, to be very clear also to you, as well as I am to my organization. These are the 4 areas that I'm focusing on. It's customers, because you have heard this many, many times, but without that focus, nothing will happen. Secondly, it's innovation based on that insight that we get. Thirdly, it's about cost efficiency, but also about cash generation. We need to focus on the balance sheet, we need to focus on cash flow. And that is also how we are prioritizing our actions. So these are the 4 things that I'm working with internally, as well as what I'm communicating to you, to be very, very transparent. Then, of course, I understand that it's words are one thing, and what you then come out in results, so to say, is the other part of the equation. And that I hope that during the next years I can come back and show also that that is coming as well. That was what I intended to say. It has been really nice. You have been very good audience listening and not falling asleep. So thanks a lot for that. Thank you.